Hello, Empire. Welcome, Garrett here. Welcome to this week's edition of Regent's Corner. So, this will be part two of one for stamping. Today, we will be covering center stamps, border stamps, and geometrics. This will be a brief overview because I could probably spend hours in several videos just on geometric stamps alone. But this is just going to give you a crash course. So let's start with the center stamps. Most common thing you'll see is they're very cheap. They come in a huge variety of various sizes. Everything from small, your pretty standard, 1 inch that you find and see that you can get from Tandy and other places, pretty cheap. And they come in all kinds of variety of pretty much anything you want. I have like a whole selection of them. So these just happen to be center stamps, 1 inch, I believe, that you can get from Tandy Leather and other places. Actually, so they got like I said, a variety, almost anything you want, anything you like. Now, they do have, as you hear, they have a little center and a square, and the reason for that is you have basically two things. You have your center stamp here that just goes in there, and this one happens to be a small one. So the thing with the small ones, when you do it, you tend to have to rock it around a little bit because the stamp will not set very well otherwise. And then you have a bigger, more wide one that I like to use. It better distributes the weight, distributes the force and the pressure of the stamp. So, and how you do a stamp's real simple. Let's see. Let's do one of my favorites. Now you're gonna set it right there. Now this is one of those times you want to get a big hammer. This is my 2-pound hammer. So you definitely want to use about a 2-pound. And you want to give it one good solid hit. As you see there, that gives me a nice good impression. Of course, the leather is cased, just as like I talked about my leather casing video. But you want to make sure you get a good, even strike like that. What you don't want, and I'll probably do this with my little one here, is if you sit here and you use too light of a mallet, I'll get my little 1-pounder, and you can see the difference in the depth of the impression, right? So that's why you want to use a good 2-pound hammer. It can be, even if you want, like I said, I have my really heavy brass one that I use for mostly driving and punching, but you could also use it for this. Now, let's say you get this light stamp, a light hit. You can usually try to save it. Oh man, that's really... But unfortunately, if you get a light hit like that, there's a good chance you're gonna screw it up. Now, when you have a good deep impression, you can slide it back into the hole there. Now, if all you're gonna have is this little one, then you're gonna have to hit it and rotate it around so you get a deeper impression. Now, because that impression's so light, there's probably not much you can do with that. That's just because what will happen is, let's say I try to line this up. Let me get my wide one. And okay, so I was able to save it. Now, what you don't want to have, you want to keep a good grip on this. Have it there, because if you're just if you don't get a keep grip, it'll bounce around and you'll lose the stamping and it just won't look good and you'll get overlay. So that's why I say get a nice thick one with a good heavy hammer. Give it one good solid hard shot. Now, the other thing you can do, and this is definitely not a space-saving suggestion, so if you're just working on your table, I wouldn't recommend doing this. You can buy what's called an arbor press. It's used to press bearings and bushings and stuff from Harbor Freight. They're about $50. $50, $60, and they are fantastic for that because it takes all the guesswork out of it. I will adjust the camera real quick, and I will get there. So let's see here. Anyways, there's my stamp selection like I was telling you about. So this is the Arbor Press. Like I said, made from Harbor Freight. You get $50, $60, and there's all kinds of videos and all kinds of crazy stuff people do. They'll drill holes in here on the bottom here, and they'll insert their stuff. I don't do anything fancy like that. So if you really want to, if you have the space and you don't want to sit there and beat, you can sit here and use an Arbor Press to make yourself a nice depth stamp. So this is a great way to go if you just don't want to deal with the hammer and beating on things and making all that noise. All right, we're going to go back to my video. So, but it's definitely not a space-saving deal. So there's a couple options with center stamps. Now let's talk geometrics. When I'm talking geometrics, I'm talking like this basket weave. I have a honeycomb. I mean, there's just even leaves. There's just a bajillion different ones out there. I even have a Celtic stamp one, a not work stamp. There's just nearly just so many I couldn't even begin to cover. Let's do one of them there. So generally how these work is, once again, we're going to take the big hammer. Now you're going to get several good solid hits, and that gives you a nice there. And then it really depends on what you're doing, but you put it inside line it up with the next one, and then the next. It's geometrics. You make the pattern. I'm not the greatest at these. I don't use these a lot, but you kind of get the idea. Then I have this really cool one I like to use sometimes, a little scale, and I kind of show you what that. So you line them up, and you can make all kinds of crazy stuff. For example, here's a pattern I was playing with, just messing around with some scrap, earlier. So it just gives you ideas of what you can do with the geometrics in that. Now, basket weave is a whole nother video on itself. And like I said, geometrics, I could cover geometrics for days on end on how to do various geometrics. So, then I was just curious. I like this. I haven't done anything yet with this honeycomb one, but I'm going to probably... But you see, you could make some really cool patterns with that. The Oxygon and stuff. And there's any number of them. So now the next thing we can do is we're going to talk border stamps. As if you've seen any of my armor, you'll see I do a lot of border stamps. I do a lot of that because it really dresses up the thing. So I'm just going to kind of practice on this, show you a little quick piece how I do it on this scrap piece layer. I take my stitch groover, because this is set to fit one of my favorite stamps. This one happens to be a Tandy Pro, but Weaver Leathercraft sells these too. They sell a lot of patterns. So I make sure that fits my border stamp, because I'm going to use this as a guide, just like I would use it for a stitch groover. I'm going to make it my nice straight line. I make a straight line. Let's see if I can. And then I set it down there. Now this is one of those parts where I talk about you want to tape the back. because this will absolutely stretch this edge out. And then I get there. Oh, I'm sorry, can't really see it in the video. But when I do it, I set it up on that line. So I'm using the line as my border. And I usually put my finger right on the edge, right along here, so I don't twist it, because that's a very important thing, is trying to keep this straight. And it jumped just a little bit there. I don't know if you can really see it, but I could tell it jumped a little. This the leather's is still a bit wet. Didn't have enough time to dry. Then when I line it up, I just slightly overlap and butted it up against there. Get it nice and straight. Give it a hit. So, as you can see, if you don't line it up straight, this is the hardest part, is getting that line straight, or else it'll bob and weave, and it just won't look very good. So this is what it takes some practice. You can also buy a roller that will press it in as well, different patterns, but you tend not to get as good a deep impression with the rollers as hand stamping. And any of these, just all it takes realistically is time and practice. I can do the same thing here with my Celtic knot. Oh, wow, that was really off. And as you see there, yeah, bad hit, completely off, a little bit gap there. So it just takes time and practice. I'm not the best with these because I don't use them a whole lot. You got to practice on scrap, figure out how much overlap. So you want it just about perfect like that. So what we don't want to see is, let me way overdo this. Yeah, something like that where it's completely overpressed, it's off center. That's that one obviously is not very good. I'm rushing it. But just shows you the border you can do. This one happens to be a kit, so you can do circles, this comes as a 5-piece, so it has circles, V's, all kinds of great stuff. Great border stamp set and whatnot. Now, we're not going to cover camouflage tools, cedars, and all that just yet, because really you only do that with basket weave, certain geometrics, and Western floral stuff, and I just do not do Western floral, which is all the fancy flowers and such. So, other than that, that is a very quick overview of how to do center stamps and options. If you're curious, most of these run in store between $6 to $8. Online, they can go. If you get some that are more desirable, that are out of print, they get more expensive. You can get now if you're looking for stamps online, make sure that they're the metal ones. If you get plastic or it says it requires a clicker press, you don't want those. That requires a specialized piece of tool. You think the Arbor Press isn't space savvy? You do not want to have a clicker press. They're huge, and they're usually typically like $400, $500, $600. So very generally, typically outside of most people's price range. So I recommend either using an Arbor Press or just sticking to metal 3D stamps like this. You can sometimes see plastic ones, but the plastic ones are more designed to go on a press, because you'll shatter them if you try to hit them like that. You know what I'm going to do? So we're going to go ahead and cover a quick. Here we go. I'll do this. So for letters and stuff, while we're at it, let's cover lettering. Leather stamps, once again, come in a little metal there. So I'll give you a little pro tip. they typically, better quality ones, but they will usually have a little mark there. They'll allow you to line them up so that you can, and big hammer, line them up. So now I have really nice marky there. Now, how I do when I'm doing my letters, the best way to line them up and keep them straight and even is you go ahead and do set your first letter, and then take your next letter, leave that one in place, and then line up your next one so that it stacks right on top of that. Get it nice and square and even so it's in line. Don't worry, I'm backwards. That's another thing you have to be really careful about when you're doing letters and numbers and stuff, that you do it in the right direction, because I can't tell you how many times I've ruined a piece by doing the letters wrong or backwards or upside down. But by doing that, you keep your even spacing, and you don't have to spend the money for now they do make tools that allow you to place it all in there at once, and you can just run through it. But that's just, a necessary tool in my opinion. In any case, that really just covers stamping. Now I'll be doing some live demos here soon, in which case I'll be bringing stamps, and you'll get to practice stamping and doing all your own stamping pieces and such. So really, just remember, when it comes to stamping, sky's the limit in creativity. Just the amount of geometrics you can do. Like I said, I don't even consider myself creative, and I just cranked this out in like 5 minutes. There's all kinds of things you can do. Like, for example, this is a bracelet I made. You see I used that border stamp with a center stamp in the center. And just a quick idea, proximity, to show you things you can do with it. So I think that will do it in this episode. So for next week's episode, I think what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and show you how to make weighted bags. I think I brought that up in the last video. And we're going to probably start moving into more project orientated material, since I think I've covered just about most of the basic stuff on how to do things. I may even do a speed lapse project. I'll have to try that. That was a suggestion I heard before. So let me know if you'd like to see more project videos. And then, or not, I can keep trying to do more educational videos. But let me know. So with that, until next time, stay crafty.